In today's video, I'll be ranking every single card inside of Clash Royale inside of this tier list again. I figured it was a good time to do it because we just had balance changes less than a week ago, so it's a new meta, so I figured you guys would be interested to know where the cards rank inside of the list. Of course, S tier is the highest tier, indicating that the card is either very versatile or it needs a nerf. A tier just means the card is above average by a decent amount, but probably doesn't necessarily need a nerf. B tier is right around average, maybe slightly on the higher end of average. C is kind of on the lower end of average or still kind of average-ish. D means it's below average by a good amount and means it's probably not too versatile. And F means the card potentially needs a buff or it's only viable in one deck. Alright, so let's get started here. We have the Archers to start things off. So this is going to be kind of an average card. I could see them being in B or C tier. They were kind of S tier or A tier for a while, but then they received a nerf because they realized they overbuffed them. I'm going to place them in C tier as of now. I just think that they're probably slightly below average right now. The arrows I'm going to say are A tier, one of the best spells inside of the game. At this point in time, I think there's been like a lot of people realizing, how strong they are, how useful they are. They were before just used in lava, but now there's many decks using them, like a lot of Mega Knight decks and just some other kind of like off meta decks. I just feel like they're a very popular deck because they can synergize well in quite a few different things. The Baby Dragon is going to be B tier. I feel like, it's just right around average. You maybe could even argue it's C tier just because there are some, I think, better air cards right now that it's used instead of the Baby Dragon. So I'm just actually going to move it down to C. I changed my mind a little bit right there because it's primarily seen in Splash Yard and in stuff like Golem, but in a lot of other decks you can use other flying cards, which I'll get to. The balloon right now is actually going to be C tier. It might be a bit surprising to you guys because the balloon for a while used to be a very dominant win condition, but right now there's not a whole lot of people using Lava Loon just because there's a lot of tornado right now, a lot of buildings, and just overall a lot of good air counters, so it can be hard to break through with the balloon, especially after that rework the balloon got, which ended up being a nerf for the balloon. So I'm going to say the Bandit is probably B tier. Very good inside of bridge spam decks, can be very annoying to deal with if you're low on elixir or don't have a proper response. The Barbarian Barrel is either going to be A or B tier. I would consider it to be around as good as arrows. Definitely, I would say like maybe slightly worse than arrows, but overall it's right up there, I would say, with the arrows. Very good inside of beatdown decks. It kind of gives you mini tank that's very cheap. Of course, you're going to see it inside of Electro Giant, Golem, Splash Yard, things along those lines. The Barbarian Hut is either going to be D or F tier. I think I'm going to give it the F tier. I think it's honestly pretty bad. I would say it's for sure one of the worst cards in the game, just because, things like Earthquake and Poison, which are pretty prevalent in the meta, just completely counter it for a very good trade. It is 6 elixir now. I do want to say that because it does say 7 elixir on this list. I guess they didn't update that. Just keep that in mind. It is 6 elixir, but I still don't think it's that good and doesn't synergize well in really any deck. The only thing you'll see it in is Elixir Golem, which that itself is not too amazing. So the Barbarians, I'm going to say, are D tier. I don't know if they necessarily need a buff, but they're pretty much only good in Lava Hound for the most part. They could be good on the defensive end, but on offense, I mean, they're extremely easy to defend with just about any card, and they're quite expensive, so I think they're pretty hard to use overall. I'm going to say the Bats are probably B tier. You could even argue they're C. I don't think they're too great right now. They kind of fizzled out of minor wall breaker decks. I'm not seeing those too often. I mean, sometimes you'll see them inside of Mega Knight decks, but I just think overall the Bats are not as strong as they used to be. They used to be an A or S tier card, but like I said, they've fallen out of the meta a little bit, and part of that might be because of the minions buff. Some people are probably using minions instead. So the healer did get a buff. It's gonna move her up to D tier. She's still a pretty bad card. I'd be lying to you guys if I was saying like, oh, healer's broken now or OP. Definitely not the case. But she's going to be a bit better now with her spawning in with heal. That's going to help her out a lot, but she only moves from F to D because I think she's just going to be used in Three Musketeers a little bit more and maybe with some Night Witch decks because she pairs well with Night Witch, Three Musketeers, stuff like that where it's like if someone uses a spell, you can heal it up before it dies like it did before, and, of course, an Elixir Golem, but I don't think she's going to be broken. This is a little bit of a prediction because the meta still hasn't entirely formed, but just from what I've witnessed so far, she doesn't seem to be super strong even after the buff. So the Archer Queen is either going to be S or A tier. I'm going to put her in S tier for now. I think she got a mini buff after the Mighty Miner got nerfed because when a champion gets nerfed, it's kind of an indirect buff to the other champions. So the Battle Ram, I'm going to say, is C tier. I don't really think it's that good. Like I said, C tier is kind of on the lower end of average. It might even be D tier. I really don't think the battle ram is that good. I might even, I might, I'm gonna keep it in C, but I might move it down to D. So the bomb tower, I'm gonna say right now is either B or A. It's been kind of replacing cannon in a lot of decks, and it's being used a lot more than things like Inferno. We're seeing it a lot in hog decks. We're seeing it now. I'm even seeing some people play Graveyard with Bomb Tower again. It's in Minor Wallbreakers. The deck that actually finished #1 last season was Minor Wallbreakers, Magic Archer, Bomb Tower. Bomber is nothing like too crazy. I mean, it's inside of. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna put it in C tier just because it's mostly only good in Electro Giant. No one really uses it with Goblin Drill anymore. It does get a decent amount of value, splash value, especially for only 2 elixir, but I don't really consider it to be that good of a card. It's not too versatile. It's not really used in many things. The bowler, I'm gonna say, is probably like B or C tier. I think it's like in competitive, it's actually quite a decent card, and we see it sometimes. And I think the decks it's used in, it gets a lot of value, but because it's not too versatile, I can't put it much higher. I think people before used to put it in like A tier and even like S. And I know some people hate the card and think like it's just super annoying, but there's no way I could put it any higher than B. But I don't know if I could put it lower than B either, because I feel like it really, in a way, kind of carries some decks. Just it has very good synergy inside a Graveyard and Lumberloon Freeze. I'm gonna say the cannon is probably A tier. It's around where the bomb tower's at. I think it's a very good building, but things like Earthquake do very good against it. So in certain matchups, it's not going to get a whole lot of value. I'm gonna say the cannon cart right now is C tier. I'm not really seeing it a lot right now. I think it's kind of had its ups and downs recently with like balance changes, and I believe the cannon nerf is what affected it, so now it's worse by a good amount. It's not dead by any means, but I just don't see it too often, so it wouldn't really make sense to place it higher. The only deck you'll see it in is that Drill Bridge Spam deck, and maybe occasionally Mortar, but that's about it. The clone's going to be D tier. You could even argue it's F, because you only see it inside of Lava Clone, so it's just not too versatile, which is why, I have to place it low. But of course, inside of Lava Clone, it can get a lot of value. Dark Prince, I'm going to say, is B tier. It's very good inside of Electro Giant, Giant Double Prince, Giant Graveyard, Golem, things like that. For Elixir, the shield is very useful. So when you take the shield off, well, it kind of serves as like a mini tank protecting the Prince, which can be pretty useful sometimes. I would say the Dark Goblin is probably B tier. Pretty annoying to deal with, but I don't think it's insanely versatile. I think in other tier lists I put it in A, but I realized it was probably a little too high for the Dark Goblin. I don't really think it's versatile enough to deserve an A rating, because when you think about it and when you think of the meta decks, it's not really in many of them, unless you consider Rascal's Bait to be a meta deck, which I don't know if it would qualify as one, but it's definitely quite annoying and does get a lot of value for 3 elixir, so B seems pretty fair. The Earthquake is going to also be B. I would say for the spells we've done so far, I think it's a little worse than Arrows as well as Barbarian Barrel. With that being said, though, the Earthquake is going to be incredible inside of Hog decks, real Hog decks, to allow you, of course, to break through buildings such as the Bomb Tower, Mortar, Cannon, things along those lines. But of course, the only drawback of the Earthquake is if you're against an air deck, it's going to get little to no value. The E-Drag is going to be D tier. Could even argue it's F tier, because there's not really a deck that you need to use it in, but with that being said, you do occasionally see it in Lumberloon Freeze, as well as Golem. And if you don't have a Lightning, it is likely going to at least get a decent amount of value in the matches. The Electro Giant, I would say, is B tier right now. I don't know if it's used enough to quite give it an A ranking. With that being said, though, Balloon is the only other win condition I think we've done so far, and it definitely is better than the Balloon. We have seen a good amount of Electro Giant recently. Very strong, of course, paired with the Golden Knight. I'm going to say the Electro Spirit is A tier. All the spirits are pretty solid for the most part, and the Electro Spirit is one of the better ones, I would say. The Electro Wizard, I actually think, is C tier. I don't really think the Ewiz is too good. There's not really a need to use him because of other replacements you can use instead. There's a lot of ranged attackers, so some of them kind of just fall out of the meta and get replaced, and I think that's pretty normal. But with that being said, inside of P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam and maybe Giant Double Prince, he is kind of a nice tool and a reset to have. E-Barbs are B tier. You could argue they're C also, but I think that they're what makes them good is I'm also taking into account like mid-ladder a little bit, and I know they're like a very popular card to play and also easy to play, and I think they are very good at punishing anytime someone's low on Elixir. And even in Bridge Spam decks high up on ladder, you'll see them pretty frequently with inside of Sparky or just Battle Ram Bridge Spam. So I think they're just overall a really solid card and can be difficult for people to defend. The Elixir Collector's C tier. I know some people think it needs a nerf. Some people thinks it's bad. It's probably one of the most controversial cards in the game. But the reality is, there's no way I could put it much higher than C because it's not very versatile. You'll only see it in Three Musketeers, Golem Pump, and occasionally Pumpo, but those decks aren't really used too much to begin with. And also on top of that, there's things that are just direct counters to it where it gets like no value. For example, the Earthquake, or even things like the, like Lightning, Rocket, Fireball, Poison. Even those would be pretty good against it, even though it's getting one elixir because you're getting tower damage. The Elixir Golem, I'm going to say, is F tier. I know it recently got that rework. It didn't really do much for it. It's still pretty bad. I mean, the Healer, on the other hand, moved up a rank, but I still think the Elixir Golem is quite horrible. The Executioner is either D or C. I kind of feel like it's C. I mean, he's actually quite decent now after the buff he received. The axe range that he throws, like the projectile range, I think that's what it is. I see him in Drill Bridge Spam now, not just in Hog X NATO. I'm gonna say the Fire Spirit is. I'm gonna say it's B tier. I feel like the E Spirit's a little better. Then again, I don't know. Fire Spirit you could argue is A. I'm gonna actually say it's A just because of the DPS it does. I think it's just as good as the Electric Spirit. I'm gonna say Fireball's A. Poison has been a lot better now, so I don't think it's S any longer because, Poison has kind of replaced Fireball in a lot of decks. But with that being said, it is nice to have that immediate DPS in many decks, such as like Expo, for example, and some other things like Royal Giant. You'll see it in commonly. The Firecracker, I think right now is. I'm gonna kind of make a little bit of a prediction here and say that she's like B tier right now. I think that buff she got is really gonna help her, that first attack buff, because now no matter how much health she has, she's always gonna get a shot on the tower, even if she's one shot. So that's going to be pretty helpful, and also just when retargeting onto a new thing, that first hit, that's going to just change a lot of interactions. So I think B tier is probably where the Firecracker's at now. I think she moved up from either D or C tier last time. Fisherman's also going to be B tier, pretty much only in RG, but it's what makes RG as good as it is. I mean, it gives you king activations, pulls things away from your win conditions, so you're able to get loads of damage on the tower, and it just has a lot of health for only 3 elixir. Say the Flying Machine is also B tier. You could even argue it's A, but I'm going to say B. I mean, it's in Fireball bait decks, which ends up getting it a lot of value, like in that Lava Fireball bait deck, Recruits Hogs Fireball bait. The Freeze is D tier. Yeah, it's kind of like the Clone. I mean, I might add some of them into F, but it's kind of the same thing as the Clone. You only see it pretty much in Graveyard Freeze, Lumberloon Freeze. It's just kind of a niche card that isn't versatile. The Furnace is F. I think Furnace is pretty bad. For sure, not much explanation needed there. Kind of like the Barbarian Hut, not really good in any kind of deck. Okay, the Giant, I'm going to say is C, because you only really see it in Giant Double Prince and Giant Graveyard, and both of those decks I don't really consider to be like a big meta deck either. It's kind of like Balloon. I would say Balloon and Giant are kind of about equal in terms of strength as a win condition right now. Giant Skeleton is either C or B. I consider Giant Skeleton, though, to be B. I think it's alright right now. There's a really good Royal Hog deck with the Giant Skeleton, that mirror one, that I think is really solid, and even though you might not see... Someone actually finished last season in the top 10 with Giant Skeleton Balloon. I think that Giant Skeleton is a bit of an underrated card. It's seen constantly and competitive at the highest level, so I'm going to say Snowball is C. I thought it was for a while like B or, A, but it just gets replaced by the other small spells. I really don't see it a whole lot. I mean, you might occasionally see it in like Loon Cycle and Hog, but I don't see too much beyond that. The Goblin Barrel's D. It's not really that good right now. Obviously, I mean, this makes sense because it's a bait card. You only see it in bait, and it's a lot harder to get damage now, and after the Goblin first hit nerf, that definitely greatly affected the card. I don't know if it necessarily needs a buff, but it's certainly a lot worse now, I would say. The Goblin Cage is C tier. Not really used a whole lot. I mean, I mostly see it in stuff like Golem, Recruits Hogs, things along those lines, so not insanely versatile. The Goblin Drill, right now the Goblin Drill's not too great. I'm actually going to give it a C tier rank. I think that it's kind of fallen out of the meta quite a lot. It used to be an S tier card, but it dropped quite a bit. Goblin Gang, I feel like I gotta give it B tier after they added that third Spear Goblin back. It's definitely been, back in action, and used to get inside of the meta. I'm seeing it in like a lot of mortar decks, and bait players are using it again. I think it's, for sure good enough. The Goblin Giant's D, it's just not that good. I think it's one of the worst win conditions inside of the game. Doesn't get a whole lot of value for 6 Elixir, and it requires very specific combinations, like with Sparky. You can't really use it outside of Sparky. It's not really going to be that effective. The Goblin Hut, I think, is D again after the nerf it just received. Now that it doesn't spawn 3 goblins anymore, it only spawns 1 when it breaks. That's a massive nerf to the card, and I think it's almost back to being as bad as it was before, so maybe the nerf was a bit overkill. Maybe it should have been 3 to 2 instead of 3 to 1. Goblins are S tier. They've replaced skeletons in a lot of decks. They do insane DPS now that there's 4 of them. I don't think many people would argue about them being an S tier card. I'm also going to say the Golden Knight is an S tier card. I don't know if I'm going to put every single champion S tier. I might do that and then swap some of them, but they're all, I mean, it's kind of, I guess this is a big surprise or spoiler, but all the champions are going to at least be an A tier, so I can figure out towards the end if I want to move them around or reorder them where I think fit. So I think the Golem right now is C tier. I would consider it to be worse than Electro Giant. Electro Giant has in many ways kind of replaced Golem ever since it came out. It's just always been more dominant in most metas. But say the Graveyard is A tier, because it's one of the only win conditions in the game where you can't completely counter. Even with a poison, it's generally going to get 1 or 2 skeleton shots, and it just, every single meta, it's always very consistent. And I feel like it doesn't really get nerfed, or many of the cards in Graveyard don't usually get nerfed either, so that helps it just kind of stay consistent no matter what the meta is. Splash Shard, especially. The guards are B. I mean, I would actually say they're C. There's not really much of a reason to use them. They're not a bad card, but just versatility-wise, there's no really big reason to use them. So you don't see them in many decks. I mean, you mostly just see them in Lava, or maybe, I don't know, like some mortar decks, stuff like that. But, I mean, what's stopping you now from just running goblins and everything, right? They've kind of just been replaced. I'd say the Heal Spirit is D tier. I mean, there's no way you could put it F. Like, of course it doesn't need a buff. I'm actually going to say C just because it's only 1 elixir, and the decks it's used in can sometimes win you the game. Just 1 or 2 heal spirits, like inside of Sparky or in Three Musketeers. You can get some very valuable heal spirits, or Bridge Spam, like Ebar's Bridge Spam. So for that reason, I'll give it C, because I guess it's in enough decks now that I think about it. I'm going to say the Hog is A tier right now. I think it's one of the best win conditions right now. Especially Hog Mortar with the Mighty Miner, really, really OP combination right now on both ladder and inside of competitive. I'm going to say the Hunter is B or C tier. I mean, it's pretty much only an RG. I'm just going to give it B because I think kind of like the Fisherman, it's just a very good card, just because it specializes against air. It's just incredible against air. So it's one of the only cards in the game that's that good against air. He fulfills that role very well. The Ice Golem's D. It's just not really that great. I mean, you see in Moon Cycle 2.6, stuff like that, but nothing that's meta really requires it. I'm going to say the Ice Spirit is S. I know it got a very small nerf, but I still think it's going to be the best spirit in the game. I believe it went from 1.3 to 1.2 seconds stun, which is still going to be a very long stun duration for only 1 elixir, just stalling win conditions, keeping them in their place so you're like able to whittle them down. Just going to be very, very, just very valuable for 1 elixir in many cycle decks. I would say the Ice Wizard is D. I mean, I know it got that buff. I don't even think that's really going to do anything, though. They just increased the spawn radius where, how when it spawns in, it deals like a little bit of damage, but I don't really see him being more versatile because of that. I think if anything, he'll just be slightly stronger in what he's used in, which is Splash Shard, because no one really uses Ice Bow anymore, so I'm going to keep him in D. I don't really think he's going to move up after the buff. The Inferno Drag, I'm going to say is A or B. I'm going to say B. It's either B or A, but I'm going to give it A just because I think in certain matchups it can easily win you the game. Like if the other person doesn't have a single reset to the Inferno Drag, it's going to be incredible against Golems and Lava Hounds and stuff like that. It's part of the reason why Golem and Lava Hound, I think, just have a really rough time and stuff like that, and even Balloon. And, it's just great against the Baby Dragon. That's why I have it higher than Baby Dragon. I just think it's for sure better than the Baby Dragon is. The Inferno Tower, on the other hand, definitely not in a good spot right now. I would actually put it in D tier. You guys might say that's a little bit overkill, but I just think so many buildings are better than the Inferno Tower. There's like not much of a reason to use Inferno Tower right now when Bomb Tower's better, when Mortar's way better, Cannon and some other buildings which we're going to get to. I would say the Knight is B tier. Very solid card ever since they gave it that hit points buff, especially. Definitely been kind of on the stronger end of like the average cards inside of the game. I'd say the Lava Hound is B tier. I would say it's better than the Balloon because not only can you use Lava Loon, you can also use Lava Miner, and I feel like Lava Miner is better than Lava Loon right now anyway. And I would just say it's kind of like an average win condition. As you've noticed, kind of all the win conditions are going to at least be D tier, so B is an alright ranking for a win condition. So the Lightning right now I'm going to say is A. It's very good inside of Royal Giant. It's very good inside of RG and probably other like Golem and things along those lines. I think it's just, for it being a pretty expensive spell, it's certainly being used quite a lot inside this meta. Probably because it's great against stuff like the Archer Queen and also a lot of the buildings. It's nice to have to help you break through them. So the Lumberjack, I would say, is C. I, for the most part, only see it inside of, like, occasionally Golem and then also that Ramrod Lumberjack deck, but it's definitely not too versatile. It's also in Lumberloon Freeze. Actually, I'm going to put it B right now just because it's really good in that Ramrider deck. And, yeah, Lumberloon Freeze, Golem. I mean, it's making a bit of a comeback. I changed my mind a bit there. I'm going to actually put the Magic Archer in A tier. You could actually argue it's S tier. I'm kind of considering doing that. I mean, it did finish #1 in the world last season. That Magic Archer Bomb Tower Wallbreaker deck is like really, really broken right now. But I'm just gonna put it in A because I don't think the Magic Archer's the main thing that makes that deck broken. I'll get to it soon. You guys might already know what I'm talking about. So I think the Mega Knight is C. I think it's just right around average or kind of on the below end of average. I think it's just about as average as you can get in this game. I think it's actually one of the most balanced cards in the game right now. I mean, you have Mega Knight Wallbreakers, Mega Knight Ramrider, which you might occasionally see, not too often, but Mega Knight Wallbreakers especially pretty decent right now. And then of course on mid ladder it's everywhere, so that's why I can't really put it too much lower. I would say the Mega Minion right now is D because the Phoenix has replaced it in a lot of decks. It just, I can't really put it much higher because not many people are using it. I mean, the only time you might see it is in Lava right now, but that's about it. Mighty Miner, I'm going to say is S tier. I think even after that nerf it got, it's still going to be very strong. It only got a 2% nerf, like a 2% health nerf. I mean, that's hardly going to do anything. Originally, it was going to be a 6% health nerf, but they lowered it to 2 because, I don't know, they thought 6 was still overkill. I don't know. I think it would have been fine. Maybe they could have done 4, but Miner's S. I mean, it finished #1 in the world last season. It's amazing in Mortar. It's amazing in Lava Hound. It's in Giant Double Prince. It's in just minor poison decks with just like minor control poison decks with like delivery and stuff. I mean, it's so versatile. Even after the nerf it got, everyone was crying after the nerf, thought it was gonna be dead, but look at it now. It's still one of the strongest cards in the game. I think it's hard to argue against it being S tier, especially when we had, I believe, multiple people using it in their deck who finished top 10 on ladder last season. So the mini P.E.K.K.A is, I'm gonna give it, it's either B or C. I'm kind of not sure between those two. I think I'm gonna give it a C just because there's not really any meta deck that you have to use it in, but there's, if it's like the type of card, if you want to use it, you certainly can, because it does a mighty fine job of doing great DPS, especially on defense. Okay, yeah, the minion horde and the minions are not really. I think the minion horde is D, and the minions I'm gonna give C. I think the minions are better than the minion horde. The minion horde is just a very risky card to use because of all the people using poison right now, arrows, like even delivery. Just there's a lot of good spells against it. The minions I find to be a little better. I think they're like a safer card. You'll see them in lava, see them in giant graveyard. I mean, even the minions aren't really that great, but I would consider them better than minion horde. The minion horde, the only thing you'd really see them with is with the skeleton king inside of mortar. I think anywhere else they're very risky card to use. I'm gonna say mirrors F, definitely one of the worst cards in the game. It might even be the worst card in the game after they made that change where when you have a champion down you can't mirror a card. That kind of made it a lot worse. I'm gonna say the monk is A. I want to say it's the worst champion right now, but with that being said, it's still an amazing champion. It's just, I think, just a bit weaker than the others, but let me know what you guys think. The Mortar's A tier. I don't know if I could give it S, but it is certainly one of the best buildings in the game. It's going at the top of A. I don't know if it needs a nerf because they already gave it a health nerf. I would feel like or assume it's enough. Mother Witch is going to be B. It's very good inside of Royal Giant decks, and it's great against the graveyard and just other kinds of swarms. I mean, yeah, like I said, you'll see it a lot in a couple different RG variants. You could also use it in bridge spam decks, so versatile enough and very, very valuable in certain matchups. Musketeer is going to be A tier. I think she's actually very good right now. I don't know why that is, but I just think inside of Hog decks and Mortar decks, because a lot of those decks have the Mighty Miner, and when you have the Mighty Miner in the deck, you can't use the Archer Queen, so people are using Musketeer as their main ranged DPS attacker. So it kind of makes sense. She kind of fills that role very well. I mean, Archer Queen, trust me, guys, if people could use Mighty Miner and Archer Queen in the same deck, people would. But because they can't, that's where the Musketeer comes in. So for the Night Witch, I'm going to say she's D tier. I forgot if I put her F last time, but I'm going to say D. I still think even after her buff, it's hardly going to do too much. She just spawns one Death Bat, so I wouldn't really consider her to be too good after that. I mean, that's just my prediction anyway. I'm going to say P.E.K.K.A.'s D tier. Not really that strong. I know people always get a little surprised when I put P.E.K.K.A. in D tier because some people think P.E.K.K.A. is very good, but I mean, in reality, like P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam is just not in a great spot right now. A lot of the cards inside of P.E.K.K.A. decks are not really that good, and I just think it's just so easy to counter the P.E.K.K.A. with swarms, and there's many other just better options because it's a very expensive card. I think the Phoenix is still S even after the nerf. They keep giving it a small nerf. I think they've given it like 5 nerfs by now. I mean, imagine how broken it was when it first came out. If after these 4 or 5 nerfs, it's still very, very strong. So the Poison is also going to be S as well. That's the reason why Fireball is A tier, because Poison has replaced it in a lot of decks. Just the fact that they added that mechanic where it slows down cards inside of the Poison was very useful because it slows it down, so the Poison is typically able to get 1 or 2 more ticks on top of the card, which adds up to be quite a lot, especially if there's multiple cards inside of the Poison. The Prince is C tier. I just think it's mostly good in Giant Double Prince, maybe Rascal's Bait Prince. It can be annoying to deal with, but it's not too strong of a card. You could even argue that it's you could actually I'm gonna actually say it's D tier. I feel like if I put the P.E.K.K.A. in D tier, I have to put the Prince in there. I feel like they're both quite easy to counter. Princess is also going to be going in D tier because she's pretty much only good in log bait decks. Now, if you don't have arrows or logs, she can be a pest to deal with. Don't get me wrong, but I just think that she doesn't really she's just not versatile enough to put any higher. I would also say the Rage is D tier. I think we just did 3 D tier cards in a row, but that's just what happens. Are we potentially going to do it? Nah, Ramrider's going in C. I think the Ramrider's in a decent spot right now in that new Monk Ramrider deck with the Magic Archer. I think that's probably, I'm gonna say Ramrider C. I would say she's better than the Goblin Giant in my opinion. So I would say she's in C. I also think the Rascals are a lot higher after their buff. I'd put them in B tier. The DPS the Rascal Girls do are quite insane, as I'm sure you guys have already seen. They were amazing in that Goblin Hunt Rascal deck. The Goblin Hunt got nerfed, so I'm curious what decks we see them in now this season, but I think it's pretty obvious now that they're finally an average card after being horrible for such a long time. Okay, I'm going to say the Rocket is probably F tier after the nerf it got. I mean, sure, you see some logbait players running it, but those are just logbait players who are very good with the card, but I think the card itself is pretty much dead when we talk about like in competitive and just like in general after the nerf. I think they maybe went a little too far with the nerf. They should probably go somewhere in between if they decide to rebuff it, give it a little bit of the tower damage back. Delivery is going to be C tier. I think it's very valuable in the decks it's used in, in that Royal Hog delivery deck with the Archer Queen and the Cannon and maybe some minor control decks, but it's not insanely versatile, and I think there's some better spells than delivery, but I mean, I don't think I can put it much lower than C. I don't think I can put it much higher, though, either. The Ghost is A. It's part of what makes Royal Giant decks so strong when it is used in Royal Giant, and, of course, Bridge Spam. It's amazing inside of Bridge Spam decks as well. The Royal Giant's going to go in A tier. I consider Royal Giant, Mortar, and Graveyard to probably be the top 3 win conditions right now. Hog 2, though, is so good. Maybe I would say RG, Hog, and Graveyard, but then Mortar... Well, Mortar's kind of a secondary win condition, so let's go with RG, Hog, and Mortar. Or sorry, RG, Hog, Graveyard. I would say are the top 3 win conditions right now. The Royal Hogs are going to be B tier. I'd consider them to be very good right now. I don't know if they quite are on the level of the cards in A tier, just because I don't know. I feel like they might actually be A right now. You know what? I'm gonna put them in A as well. I mean, they're that Queen Royal Hog deck with Earthquake is back and recruits Hogs, Giant Skeleton, Hogs, Mirror. Yeah, I mean, and even though Mirror's an F, I still think it's F, even though it's good in that one deck. I just think that's an exception. But anyway, I'm gonna say recruits are B tier. I know it's kind of similar to like the Elixir Collector I was talking about, where they're only in very specific decks, but I think that recruits are the reason why recruits hogs are very good. And I think if you don't have specific responses, like for example a bowler, Valkyrie, a log, stuff like that, the recruits can be really frustrating to play against. Like if you're using a deck that has a lightning or a rocket or something like that. So I feel like they're the card that's very like matchup dependent. I'm thinking B is alright for them. The skeleton army is gonna be, I would say D. I actually think it's very easy to counter. Sure, with the skeleton king pairs well with it, but I just don't think it's that good. I'm gonna put skeleton barrel in F mostly just because I want to see it get a buff. I don't think the skeleton barrel is that good. I mean, I kind of made, you know what, I'm putting it in D just because recently I have seen it a little more. I changed my mind a little bit. I've been seeing some weird recruit skeleton barrel decks and like mortar skeleton barrel. I've been seeing again for some reason. There's been a small increase. I'm gonna put Skelly Dragons in C. That's gonna be my prediction. I think they're a little better. They got a decent health buff, and since there's two of them, that's an even bigger buff than if it was just one card getting a 5% health buff. So I'm gonna say they're C. They're definitely gonna be a below average card still, but I'd say they might have moved up from D to C. They're gonna be quite strong in lava again, I feel like, and maybe in Royal Giant and in Royal Hogs, we'll see them again. I mean, we'll just have to see. I mean, they survive Arrow Zap now, and they're going to stay alive in many more situations than they did before. Skeleton King is definitely going to be an S tier. Amazing inside of Splash Yard, amazing inside of Royal Giant and Mortar, and probably some other things I'm forgetting, because he's a pretty versatile card, and the ability is pretty broken sometimes, because it's like a 2 elixir graveyard. I'm going to say Skeletons are A, because Goblins kind of brought them down to A. Sparky's D, kind of where the Goblin Giant is, just pretty easy to counter. 6 elixir, pretty risky card to use, and I just think, there's a lot of lightning, resets, so really good counter Sparky. It's really hard to kind of make it work. But there are some Sparky players who have success with it, but it's mostly because they're very good at the deck. I don't think Sparky's like a too strong of a card or anything. I think the Spear Goblins are probably B tier after the buff they got. They probably moved up from C to B. They got that, I believe it was a range buff, so that certainly helped them out a bit. I'm going to say the Tesla is F tier right now. I would be alright with it getting a buff. I don't think that we're getting to the Expo. I don't think the Expo needs one, but I would certainly be fine with a Tesla buff. I think the Tesla is quite weak, and it's not good in any deck except Expo, and even Expo isn't really in a great spot right now. I'm going to say Log is S tier. People, again, kind of like the Miner, were crying, worried about the Log nerf, thought it was going to be dead, but, clearly that's been proven wrong, and we see it, of course, more than the Arrows and the Barbarian Barrel still, so definitely deserving of S tier. Three Musketeers are going to be in, I'm gonna say D tier. I can't really put them higher. I would say they definitely got to be lower than the Elixir Collector, because the Elixir Collector is guaranteed to be played with the Three Musketeers, but sometimes you see the Elixir Collector with Golem and with Pumpo, but the Three Musketeers they're only in Three Musketeer decks. I know that doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of like saying P.E.K.K.A's only in P.E.K.K.A decks, but I think you get my point. They're a very expensive card, and they're not a card you come across against. Sure, there's some good Three Musketeer players that can have success with them, but they're just overall very easy to counter, and I don't think the healer buff is going to be enough to bring them up much higher. Tombstone's A tier. It's incredible inside of Splash Shard, Royal Giant, and Lava Hound decks. Part of what makes those decks all very good. The Tornado I'm going to put in S tier, just because I think last season that was kind of proven with the Magic Archer Tornado Bomb Tower Wallbreaker deck, which finished number 1. Also, of course, we can't forget Electro Giant, part of what makes Electro Giant so good, also part of what makes Splash Yard so good, and all of those decks with the Tornado. And I've before put it in A, but I think it's time for a small tornado nerf. I was thinking they should take away some of the damage it does to towers. I think it needs to do at least one damage because otherwise people can play it next to the king tower without it activating, which would actually be a buff. So I think they should cut the damage it does to towers in half. I know you guys might be thinking that's not anything, but in this game, the smallest of interaction changes and nerfs make a massive difference because that's less chip damage they're going to be getting throughout the match. I'm gonna say the Valkyrie is B tier. I would say it's around where the Knight is at right now. I mean, the only reason why Knight and Valkyrie aren't higher is because Mighty Miner is used in a lot of decks, and it doesn't make sense to use Knight or Valkyrie in a deck when you can use Mighty Miner. The Wall Breakers are going to be B tier. I feel like they've kind of made a little bit of, I don't know, a comeback recently in usage, and like Mega Knight Wall Breakers also. No, you know what? They're A tier. They're definitely A tier right now. I changed my mind a little bit. I can't forget they did finish first last season. So the Witch is going to be D tier. The Poison, of course, is incredible against her. And, you know, Fireball, all those types of spells, even Lightning. And she just doesn't really synergize well in a lot of decks. You mostly might just see her in mid-ladder decks or in graveyard decks, but that's about it. I'm going to say the Wizard is F tier. I think he should get a small health buff. It would actually be cool to see him survive to the Poison, so I don't know what that would be. Maybe like a 5% health buff, kind of like what the Skeleton Dragons got. The Expo is going to be, right now, D tier. I actually don't think the Expo is that good. I don't think the Expo needs a buff, though. I think the Tesla would be more deserving of one, but you guys can let me know how you feel about that, because I know Expo is a very controversial card, and I know a lot of people would be really mad if it got buffed. But I know Expo players would be thrilled. So the Zap is going to be D tier. I think it's worse than the Snowball. Yeah, no, you know what? I'm just going to put it same tier as Snowball. I don't think I could say it's worse than Snowball, because I think they're actually around the same in usage and in strength as well. I'm going to say these Zappies, but the Zappy is pretty much only used in Giant Double Prince, Lava Hound, Sparky, stuff like that, so it's not nearly used as much as the Log is. It's pretty much never used inside of cycle decks. It's just solely a beatdown card. And the Zappies will end the list being in A tier. I think the Zappies are amazing, especially inside of Royal Giant decks and in Recruits Hogs. They're one of the most defensive cards in the game, and they're pretty much every single matchup going to get value if your opponent doesn't have a Fireball. So that's going to be it for the list. Let me know what you guys agree with. Let me know what you guys disagree with. Like, subscribe, and thanks again. Until next time, guys.